Hey, Chamber members, Alan Waters here, your Director of Marketing and Communications at the Montgomery County Chamber of Commerce and your Words of Wisdom podcast. Today, I am joined by
Melissa Yahnko.
Well, Melissa, tell us, first and foremost, where you work, those kind of pieces, and then we'll dive into the questions.
I own Inkworks Studio. We're a custom residential architecture firm, and our office is in Fair Lawn.
Awesome. First question I ask everybody, at least their first time on the show, what does success mean to you?
Success to me means freedom.
Okay. That's an interesting word, I think, because there's so many layers to that. So freedom, what, to do what you want, freedom to have, peace of mind. What is the freedom?
So when I first started Inkworks, freedom was about schedule.
Okay.
Being able to work my business and my life around my children. And being able to be a productive, contributing member of society and still be a full-time stay-at-home mom. That was really important to me. As my parents aged, that freedom was to be able to help take care of them and get them where they needed to be. And now it's about freedom to be who I am and to do the kind of work that I want to do, the kind of work that feels important and meaningful to me.
Okay. And so I know I sent a couple questions. We're going to derail immediately. I'm a brand new father. And so the freedom of being able to have that time with your kids, that's a really big factor for me. With business ownership, so often you hear about how you're working harder than you've ever worked, even when you're working with someone else. It's not just the 40 hours. It's taking a lot of stuff home. When you first started, how did that freedom of being the business owner and being with your kids, how did that really work? Was it a lot of years of learning curves of in the office and not knowing? How did that kind of come about?
So I worked from home, and I think that was a huge benefit for me. I had the office right in the house, and so I worked when they slept.
Okay.
Which meant I didn't sleep. But it was wonderful. It was great to be able to play with them, to take care of their needs. And if everybody went down for a nap, then I could work for a couple hours. And if not, that was all right. Eventually they went to bed and I could work for a couple of hours. I was a little bit of a zombie for several years, but it was worth it to me.
Yeah, I mean, those are things that you can never get back. I mean, yeah, I 100%. The clients are there. You've got to make the money to be able to do the things, get that for every day. But I mean, I'm only 8 weeks in, and I already am finding myself going, you're so much bigger. Or the hardest part, honestly, is being at work, going home, and knowing I've got maybe 3 hours before she's asleep and down for the night. So being there, being with them, that's really cool. How did you balance that, though, with the growing of the business? At what point did you say this is enough money, or this is where I'm going to start having to make different sacrifices?
I think they grew with me. Okay. So I started this business in 1998, and my oldest was born in 1999. So I was a very new business. At the same time, I was a very new mom. And as my children, who are less than 3 years apart, as they started preschool and school, I had more freedom to be able to meet with clients during the day. Also, if you had either of my kids in here, they would tell you that they worked for me. And they did. I didn't have any problem taking a 2-year-old to a job site, and they would help measure.
Yeah.
They couldn't read the numbers, but they could hold the zero end of the tape. And so I paid them in ice cream. Now I have to pay them in dollars. But we just made it work. We just made it work.
And I mean, at that point, one, I'll say, non-accountant, non-attorney, none of this is legal advice. That's a good write-off. My daughter's a paid model. So, you go for what you do. When you were kind of starting company, the freedom on those aspects, but what else was it that kind of made you go, all right, I think this is what I want to do?
I decided that I wanted to be an architect when I was in high school.
Okay.
Which is kind of a weird thing to pick. And I'm going to blame my mother. She was a school teacher, and probably shouldn't have been a school teacher. She had so many talents that were untapped. And so we would go to a lot of open houses, a lot of Sunday afternoons driving around the county looking at different houses and critiquing them. Okay. Oh, this would be so much better if the living room was here. Oh, this would be so much better if this door opened this way. And then we would buy plan magazines at the grocery store. I know that's all online now, but back then it was in print.
Right.
And would spend hours together at the kitchen table re-sketching the houses so that they were right. I also had a dear friend of the family who was a civil engineer and owned her own firm. And so from a pretty young age, I saw that it was possible and what women could do in these technical fields. I just went for it.
So we had an episode with Cassidy Jones with Slate Creek Builders, and some of the things we talked about was very similar. She was like, we'd go to the open houses, I'd get the stuff out of the rack. But what she does is more specifically on the drawing and the design side. And she talked about the fact that she's not an architect. And we talked a little bit in that episode about what the differences are, but I get the chance to learn it from the other side. So for you, what are some of those main differences as an architect versus someone that is solely working on the design, the drawings, and those pieces?
So an architect is primarily a designer, and that's why there's so much alignment with what Cassidy does and what I do. We love to problem solve. We love puzzles. We love when people bring us challenges. So trying to figure out the best design solution to those problems is an absolute integral part of what we do. I would say the architects have a broader knowledge of construction techniques. We are trained to know our building materials and how they function. We're trained to do our own structural analysis on most or some projects. I handle all my own structures for residential unless it's really outside of the box. Commercial, I leave that to a structural engineer. But we're also taught how to coordinate the whole project team so that we're working with mechanical engineers, civil engineers, electrical engineers, fire protection specialists, et cetera, and kind of conducting that whole orchestra together to get us to final drawings. And then we do a lot of on-site work as well. When your house or school or medical office is under construction, we're at the job site weekly or twice a month, once a month, however often you want us to be there, to oversee the construction, to make sure the plans are being followed, to deal with issues that we could not have foreseen. So there's a lot of parallels, but I feel like we just add another layer.
I'm a big fan of the show How I Met Your Mother, so I don't know if this is a true example or not. But there's a one episode where Ted, as an architect, is worried and talking about a library where they designed everything, but they didn't take into account the weight of the books. And so over time, the library slowly slank until it was condemned. That's part of the structural integrity in those pieces, right? So, like, how do you go about factoring that in? I mean, I'm not saying, hey, tell me how each book weighs, but like that. But when you get to some of those specifics, where does that thought process kind of start?
So when you're working on a structural problem like that, you do have to take into account all of your loads, right? And there are guidelines. We know that in a house, any room that's not used for sleeping, we're allowed to use a load of 40 pounds per square foot. That covers most furnishings. It doesn't cover a hot tub. It doesn't cover a waterbed. Those things would be additional.
Oh, I never thought about how heavy a waterbed is.
Yeah.
I've never liked them because the movement, but now I'm like, oh wow, yeah, I gotta weigh a ton.
Well, water's 8 pounds per gallon, so yeah, they're not light.
All right, I can't do the math. I'm the marketing person. So even when you get into like,
but Google's a big help, Alan.
Okay,
like Google's a big help. I don't know how I would run my practice without Google or ChatGPT to answer those kind of questions.
Well, then that kind of makes me think, though, you started this in 1998.
Yeah.
Those things didn't exist then.
No, we were all in the book then.
Okay.
Everything was in a book.
And beyond that, what other ways has it kind of evolved? Because I feel like it used to be, if someone wanted some kind of design specific, they had to have either seen it in someone's house, they had to have been able to see a technical drawing of something. Now anyone can pick up Pinterest and have all of these ideas in seconds.
Yeah.
How do you manage that with, I don't know, some people have unlimited budget. Come talk to us.
I've had 2 unlimited budget projects in 26 years. That's not normal.
Right. So for those that have to do that, how do you start figuring out the limitations of all of these design elements are great? Yes, that is a gorgeous staircase. It is XYZ and all of that.
There is a lot of expectation management. There's just a lot of, I don't want to say hand-holding because it makes it sound like I know more than my clients, and that's certainly not the case. But there is a lot of reality check. And there's also a lot of just guidance needed. Like, okay, so the tile that you selected is $120 a square foot. Let's go find something that makes your heart just as happy in the $20 to $25 square foot range. It's out there. We just have to find it.
Yeah.
Or knowing that we can use like a finish like that in a very, very small, special place. But then we can pick a field of tile around that would be significantly more budget conscious. And then you get a win-win.
Right.
There's just, I guess it comes down to experience. There's a lot of experience that I've had in 26 years that I can then funnel through and provide for each client.
And within that expectation management and those pieces, I think about this quote a lot, and I've mentioned it a lot of, I think, this season, where the customer's always right. And I know the full quote is the customer's always right in terms of taste. Where do you start to manage the expectations of absolutely we can make and look and do these things now on the technical side of pieces? If you do this, this is where the limitations of the amount of space you have around this. How does that side work versus the opposite? Because I think about it back in theater and how many scenic designers I worked with that it was like, this is absolutely the most beautiful scenic design I could ever think of. Your stair egress for the actors to open, that stair is supposed to be 3 inches according to your technical drawings. We cannot safely do that. How does that, I just, on the house side, I feel like it's got to be a lot more stringent than on a scenic design.
Well, luckily we have building codes. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, building codes are the law, and a lot of people don't realize that. They are the minimum standard to build any building in the Commonwealth of Virginia. But they are a law, and we have to follow them. We can do better. We can't do less.
Right.
And so having that law underneath to back you up is helpful. But you mentioned theater. So there's a lot of improv in architecture, and there's a lot of yes and, right? Yes, you can have that, and we can accomplish it this way.
And those laws, so that's something I know from my very brief time in real estate. There's still some things, though, that are kind of grandfathered in. Like most houses have to be a certain number of feet away from the road, but then there are structures that have been built long ago that don't meet that. When you're going through some of those updates, some of those renovation pieces, let me first ask, you do the architecture piece, do you do a lot of renovations? Is it more of first-time builds, new construction? Where does that come into it?
Yeah, we do it all.
Okay.
I love renovations because it's a bigger challenge, right? I have to work with known conditions, and it forces me to be more creative. I really love that about renovations and additions. That being said, the blank slate of a new house is so fun. So I like that I get to do both.
And I feel like with renovations, you also sometimes have things where you have to realize it's not going to be possible, because I think about how many older buildings exist here and how many people are very passionate about always renovating and saving. But I also know sometimes because of how they've done things in the past, that's not the case. So when do you get into those situations and realize, hey, this is a safety issue that can't be. Or the commercial side, hey, this can't be done this way because it's not ADA compliant. How does that kind of process work for you? Is it first you've got the inspectors going in and noticing these pieces, or is it you sitting down with your clients and looking at what the drawings already exist?
Sometimes we're lucky enough to have drawings that already exist. I would say 85 to 90% of the time we don't. But there is a code in Virginia called the Existing Building Code, and that gives us a lot of guidelines for what does need to get brought up to the current building code and what doesn't. And quite honestly, we're allowed to do, that gives us a lot of leeway. We're allowed to do anything that doesn't make the building worse in a lot of different cases, which is nice. The ADA compliance, to making things accessible for people, that's terribly important. Sometimes it's not feasible.
Right.
And that code gives us the ability for some workarounds where it's not feasible, especially when we're in historic structures.
Right.
There's a lot more leeway in a historic structure than just an older house or older building. But accessibility is important.
I think about some of my time back in theater in New York, and the theaters that I worked in, that it was one of those, like, there's no way it ever would have been able to be ADA compliant. I remember a bathroom that existed that it was like, I could barely get through it walking. A wheelchair was never, ever going to be able to do that. And it was really unfortunate because the only option would have been to tear that whole floor down to its studs and restart. And that's not always in someone's budget. So do you have any examples of truly, I don't want to say nightmarish, but like situations where you've walked in and you've been like, oh no, we can't do, oh no.
Yeah. First, let me tell you one that ended well.
Good.
So we were working with a space in downtown Roanoke. It was definitely a historic building, although it wasn't on the historic preservation list, but it was built in like the 1920s. So old. And they had this adorable bathroom. Absolutely no way it was ADA compliant. However, it was so cute. The finishes were really well done. They were old fixtures, but they were still in great condition. But the client wanted to turn this into an assembly space. That's anything where people gather. So restaurants, nightclubs, that kind of thing are all assembly spaces. And we had to put in an accessible bathroom. At that point in time, the code did not allow for us to put in a gender-neutral bathroom in an assembly space. It does now, but it didn't then. But I went to the building official and said, it makes no sense to tear out this beautiful bathroom to make it accessible when we could build an accessible bathroom next to it. And then we would have two. And instead of being male and female, they would be accessible gender neutral and non-accessible gender neutral.
Right.
And the building official was forward thinking enough to say, yeah, I think that's a great idea. And we went forward with it. So that adorable little bathroom that you can't turn around in twice is still there, and it's great. And right next to it is an accessible bathroom for people that need more space or need a companion with them or a mom that has to take in kids. It was a great solution where we thought really we were going to be in a lot of trouble.
I really love the examples you did because I've never considered that part of the accessibility is the fact that some need that animal companion with them. And yeah, that takes space. That's not something I honestly have always thought it from the lens of, to be able to get a walker, to be able to get a wheelchair, to be able to get something that does physically take more room. But learning new things. I love that. Do you have any examples where it was like, all right, I can't do this. It just has to go.
I mean, sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do. We are working on a project right now, hoping to get it under construction in the next couple of months down in Wytheville. It is a gorgeous building. Again, it's an older building, dates back to at least the 1890s. Gorgeous building. Because of what the client wants to do with it, we have to cover up some of that beautiful old structure. We have to make it safe. We have to put fire separation in, which is going to cover up the gorgeous wood beams and the exposed wood joists. But safety does have to come first.
Yeah.
I have the liability, and I could never live with myself if someone was injured or died in a building because of something I did wrong. And so safety does come first. That is a big part of being an architect, is you take on the health, safety, and welfare of the public.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, I want to talk to you a little bit more about how your organization is a green organization and what that really means when it comes to the design and build aspects. Inkworks Studio, crafting thoughtful, sustainable spaces. Founded in 1998 by architect Melissa Yahnko, Inkworks Studio has spent over 26 years shaping homes and communities with a deep commitment to ecological design and building science. As a registered architect in Virginia with experience spanning multiple states, Melissa brings a wealth of knowledge to every project, whether it's a custom home, a renovation, or a multifamily development. Inkworks Studio remains intentionally small to provide clients with a truly personalized experience. Homeowners and small business owners work directly with Melissa, ensuring designs that are both functional and sustainable. From energy-efficient new construction to thoughtful renovations, the studio prioritizes smart design solutions that enhance both comfort and environmental impact. Services include custom homes, renovations and additions, multifamily housing, mixed-use buildings, and more. For more information about Inkworks Studio, visit facebook.com/inkworksinNRV. That's facebook.com/inkworksinNRV. Back to the episode. All right, we are back. Real quick before we dive in, I need to thank Grand Home Furnishings for all of the furniture that's in here, our great carpet and our rug, not carpet, but great rug and the chairs. Not only make it more comfortable, really help with the sound of the small space. So thank you, Grand, for doing that. All right, so I think it's really easy for people to hear green organization, green business, and think of very specific things. Think of recycling, think of that. But being green is so far beyond that. So
Yeah.
for you, what are some of those pieces that actually you take that make you a green organization?
So first, I need to point out that construction is one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gases, or to
Emissions.
greenhouse emissions, and that a lot of the materials that we choose to build with, like concrete, while amazing and awesome, are really bad for our planet. And so in the construction industry, we have to be really careful of the decisions that we make in the design process and while we're putting together the construction drawings to lighten that load, to reduce our footprint. And certainly we talk to our clients about the possibility of solar or geothermal heating and cooling, or even wind energy, to help get them off the grid or reduce their grid energy that they're using. But it's even more important the decisions that they're making inside of their building. So it's not just the life cycle of the house and their utility bills, but it's what kind of insulation are we using? Are we using materials that can be recycled in the future? Or are we creating things that are just going to sit in a landfill for time and all eternity? And those are things that people don't necessarily think about being green.
Right.
But they're huge decisions with a big impact. And there's a whole branch of architecture on building science, and that's making our buildings perform in the best way possible, so that they're breathing accurately, and we're not building up mold and mildew, which are terribly unhealthy to live in. So we're concerned with indoor air quality and insulating and keeping the heat out when we want and keeping the heat in when we want.
Right. So as things have progressed, what are some of those materials that we have kind of moved towards that are much more destructive? Because I think about back to the renovation piece of how many houses or structures that people go into, and there's only so much that can be done because they open that wall and that is asbestos.
Yeah.
And it's like, great, that either lives there or you don't. So what do we have now is fiberglass better? Is it worse? What does that go into?
I mean, fiberglass isn't the worst insulation out there, but there are significantly better choices. There's a product called Rockwool, and it's not the old Rockwool. It's a newer one, but it's actually spun out of rock. It's really cool. It's also an amazing sound attenuator. So I love it. It's fairly natural. It's easy to reuse and recycle. And there's also, it looks like recycled blue jeans, but it's an insulation that's actually made out of recycled newspapers. And it's blown in damp. It's called damp blown cellulose. And it dries before you close up the wall. And it's an amazing insulation, both heat and sound. Again, completely reusable and recyclable. I love both of those products.
I've seen a lot in the audio space. A lot of studios, it's the Rockwool that's dampening a lot of that because it's fantastic. Other thing, because like you mentioned concrete, and I think to the articles and the big news stories I've seen where the 3D printing with concrete has happened, as some of that technology is being integrated into pieces, what is the more eco-friendly version of that? Is it a 3D printer? And I've seen some that it's been like recycled plastics, but what is I'm trying to think of, what is the layman's use of that? The everyday person that is building a house, what is their version of that material?
I don't know that we have a better 3D printing than concrete right now.
Okay.
I'm not sure that recycled plastic is really the right answer either. I love that we're 3D printing houses. I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
And it solves one problem in the construction industry, which is a labor issue. It doesn't solve the green issue. Right now, the greenest thing that we have is the way we've built for years with wood studs.
And I'm sure, like anybody else who spends too much time on social media, you may have seen this, that is the comparison of what wood used to be versus what wood is now. I'm sure part of the answer here is yes, that's why some of the older constructions are outlasting some of the newer constructions. But as we see more of that, as we see more of deforestation and see more of those pieces, what long-term effects do you think that's having on the housing industry and the structural integrity of places?
When you go into an older house, 1930s, 1940s, and you look at the lumber that was used, that's old forest growth, right? That's what you're referring to. It's usually hardwood. It's not softwood. They're also not sized down. So 2x4 is not 2x4 inches. It's 1.5 by 3.5. When you see a 2x4, I know. When you see a 2x4 or 2x6 in those houses, it is 2x4 or 2x6. But the fact that we're actually growing wood for construction now, we're not ripping out old forests any longer. We're growing lumber specifically to be used in construction, which is why we're not seeing the same quality as these old forests. But it is better for our
footprint. And,
our footprint for the ecology of our planet.
And within that, is there a portion of, and I don't know if this is just architecture, if this is agriculture, if it's agritecture, but like, is there science being done to work on the makeup of those plants? Are we just planting the same trees, or have we learned, hey, these particular types of woods do better. Here are things that are strengthening them, and we're genetically modifying those pieces?
I'm not aware of anything like that.
I just think about how many times and how many things we have that we eat that have been over time genetically modified for different reasons. Think about Brussels sprouts as probably the biggest example of one. I love Brussels sprouts, but I know so many people that hate them that have in like adulthood had them, and they're like, this isn't as bad as I remember it. It's like it's actually physically, it's not. It's something different. So that's kind of where my thought goes. Is I'm assuming if you are in that field and want to come on the podcast, I'd love to talk about it. So beyond those pieces of green, what also, as you're going into like some of the plans and stuff, as we've evolved from everything being printed book, printed paper, more technology based, what are those benefits versus negatives that you've seen? Because we talked about Google ChatGPT, and I know that on a fully technical standpoint, ChatGPT uses more energy than Googling something, which I'm guilty of saying that's unfortunate. ChatGPT gives me better answers. So
sometimes,
yeah. How do you weigh some of those pieces in what you're doing as well?
Well, let's just talk about how much the technology has changed.
Yeah.
When I went to high school and college, we were drawing everything by hand on paper with pencil or ink, which means every time there was a change, we had to erase it or start over on that sheet. The first architecture firm I went to was using CAD, which was great, because now it's an erase command versus crumple up the sheet and start over, or erase what you've drawn and start over. So we've become a little bit more efficient in that way. It's a lot more electricity, right, to run the computers than the little lamp over our drawing station.
Right.
And now we're in 3D, right? We don't draw anything in 2D anymore. Yes, our construction documents are a 2D output, but everything that we create for our clients to see is a 3D model inside of a computer. So the technology jump that I've seen since 1990 when I started at Virginia Tech is immense.
And with ChatGPT, with artificial intelligence, how many of those pieces are starting to become more ingrained in the field?
We are seeing artificial intelligence inside some software, not yet inside of BIM and CAD software.
Okay.
At this point, if you're going to use one of the AIs to create a house, it's not going to be a good house.
Right.
It's just not. And I'm grateful for that right now.
Yeah.
But I can have ChatGPT or the AI within the building code search the building code for things for me now. It's not yet making interpretations.
Right.
But it can filter through hundreds and hundreds of pages of information in seconds.
Right.
And spit out all the answers, which is a huge time saver, and I love that.
I feel like granted, I could very well eat my words, but I feel like we're still a ways off from AI being able to design a house that is fully structural, that doesn't have to be double checked by a team. I mean, even when we get there, I feel like that's where we're going to see some things evolve, that it won't just be, oh, AI designed the house and now we're building it. AI might design it, but then someone is still going to have to go through and do the actual triple checking of everything, because I don't know about you, but my ChatGPT is not great at making images with people without 25 thumbs. Like, it's just, we're not there yet.
We're not, especially when you get to the super technical aspects, right? You know, the beam calculations and the stair tread depth and the stair riser height and the nosing and all that. I think we're a long way off from artificial intelligence being able to make those case-by-case determinations and come out accurately every time. Although I will say, when artificial intelligence is doing the design, I'll be sad, because the design is the fun part of what we do.
Yeah.
And to have a machine take that creativity away from us will be a hard loss. It will be a big loss.
But I also think it's not going to be. I think about how much we have AI that can make music. I've heard it make full songs. There's still a difference between that and those who really truly appreciate what the music is. That's where you're going to start getting into, well, are you losing your ideal client anyway? Or are you losing necessarily the client that never wanted to come work with you to begin with?
I think right now, we're losing the client who didn't want that experience of working with an expert, of working with someone who was going to guide them through the process and provide all of those design decisions for them.
Do you have anything that is your favorite thing to design?
I mean, housing is my favorite thing to design. It doesn't matter whether it's single family or multifamily or a housing component to a mixed use building. I love interacting with spaces that people are going to live in.
Well, one, unlimited budget, hit her up. But outside of that, do you have someone that you'd say is your preferred client? Someone that you really would love to work with?
I love working with busy professional couples.
Okay.
They know what they want, right? They're very focused and they don't have a lot of time to waste. And so it's a great dynamic between them and our office. It works very well. I have several clients that fit that demographic right now, and they're just my favorite projects time and time again. And it doesn't come down to personality. It's just that, this couple is busy and they're focused on what they do well, and they allow me to focus on what I do well for them.
I think that is one of the most important things for anyone with a client is a client needs to treat you as the professional. The minute they stop treating you as a professional and they're trying to micromanage, that's the moment you are going to do more work for less money, and ultimately it's going to be a headache. And I know that's, especially as small business owners, that's hard to say no to someone. It just is.
It is.
But sometimes that no is going to save you down the road.
And it's going to save them too. First of all, not everybody needs an architect. And you can buy house plans online that may suit your needs. And if that works better for you than working with us, then that's what you should do.
I do love being able to see something that is fully custom, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it breaks my heart sometimes when I can go to different states and I can see the same exact house a million different ways, except the porch is on here on the left and not on the right, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. Well, and that's not taking into account any of what's going on that particular piece of property, right? Like you're not capturing unique views. You're not dealing with a unique or different topography, which would be handled differently if we weren't using the same house plan, across 17 states.
Here in Virginia, that is very important. I mean, I think home in Georgia, where for us, when you say make a mountain out of a molehill is about the closest to a mountain we've got. You can see for miles. Here, that's not.
No.
The amount of houses I've seen built into mountainsides, I'm just like, that's awesome. I would hope I wouldn't trip, But so for those ideal clients, where can they find you? Where they can get your information? All of the fun stuff.
Well, we're fairly active on Facebook and Instagram, and so I would love for them to reach out to me there. They can also call the office, and they can get that number on the chamber website or Google.
Yeah. Inkwork Studio, Google Business Profile, Chamber Business Directory. We've got both available. Any final parting words that you want to give people?
This was a lot of fun, Alan. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, chamber members, for tuning in. Thank you, Melissa, for being here with us. Make sure that you like, follow, subscribe, all of those fun things so that you don't miss any of our posted videos. We've got a lot of content going out, our lunch and learn, small business workshops, more podcast episodes. So make sure you're following along. In the meantime, make sure you go out, invest, connect, engage, and prosper.